deliberation. With that said, I generally agree with Danielle, what you're saying, and then Chris, what you followed up with, that's also my understanding too. I think the referral response, there could be a benefit to just adding the language that the water need can be met at this time, and that there's, the CSD reserves the right to reevaluate in the future under certain conditions. And that would be my recommendation to kind of capturing that conversation. Is there any other board members that had any comments or discussion on this item?
Would that require bringing the letter back with that language?
I think that's up to the board. I guess Chris could answer that. Sorry.
I think adding a little bit of language to that effect wouldn't require it coming back. We could bring it back, but I think that the project is kind of waiting on us at this point. So I can add some language to that effect and pass it by the president, and she can distribute it if she would like. I don't want to cause a Brown Act violation, but I think that we can do a little amendment there and get it to the county and see what happens with it. Megan, if you wouldn't mind forwarding me a note that how you would suggest those edits, and I'll add it to the water portion.
Okay, that sounds great. So I think if there's no further discussion, we'd be looking on if someone wants to make a motion regarding if we want to approve this item with the additional language in the water section.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditions as depicted in the draft letter, including the updated verbiage from Meg. That's to be sent to the planning department.
Second.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Now we will move on to item number 2 under business items. This is the Manila RV Park revitalization update, draft scope of work, contract, and petition. And I will go to Chris for staff report.
Thank you. The last time we brought this up last month, the board had asked us to move forward with providing a draft scope of work and a draft contract. And since that time, we've gotten a couple of letters and a petition that I put in the packet, and people might have seen some signs placed around the community. There's been some other background chatter just with staff and here and there, and I'll leave that for a different discussion if anybody wanted to get involved in that. But really, staff is looking for direction on how the board would like to move forward or not with this project. And I believe Farah is with us tonight if she wanted to answer any questions. When it came to that, I know that there's some questions about some of the language in the contract that was provided. And with that, I'll turn it over to Farah and the chair.
Yeah, I would love to jump in on this one. Yeah, so I'm sure some of the people here are here because of this topic. And I definitely just wanted to first of all say I really appreciate that so many people have gotten involved and are like voicing their feelings about this. That's always nice. The concern I had was that some of the information didn't seem maybe fully accurate. So I just wanted to kind of clarify, because just to be clear, I was the person last month who made the motion to move forward with this, but I just wanted to clarify some points so that everybody's on the same page. And once that's done, I feel like if there still is a majority of residents who are concerned about this, then of course we should fully take that into consideration and follow what the residents would like. I have no real stake in this. I'm not an RV camper or anything like that, but I just wanted to quickly go over my thinking on this and why I made that motion last month. First of all, we haven't signed any contracts at this point. So there is no, nobody's been hired or nothing official has been signed. We voted, as Chris just said, to move forward in that direction. So there is nothing set in stone at this point, and there's a lot of directions this could still go, and that's why it's great to have this dialogue with residents. Second thing is, in the draft contract, there's no expansion of the RV park. This RV park's existed for over 10 years. So it's a 3-site park. It would continue to be that under this contract. The third thing was, this park is completely unrelated to the park improvement grant that we've been working on. It wouldn't take any funding away from any of the projects that people were hoping to accomplish with that funding. So the only overlap there is the RV park location itself. Maybe some of the projects that people were hoping to happen could happen in that geographic location. But from my perspective, that park is quite large. There's a giant field. So I don't really see this impeding any of the park improvement grants. People were saying, you know, there will be no BMX track, no this, that, or the other. All of that stuff can still happen. Whether it was a financial liability to the district, this RV park has historically broken even, as I understand it. That was with no marketing and with staff that didn't really have a proven track record in the hospitality industry. I mean, not to take away from Maggie, she was great, but we have a proposal now from someone who has a proven track record in hospitality, online marketing, et cetera. So it's very likely that this would be a financial asset to the district, or at the very least would continue to break even. So there would be no burden financially on the district. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the survey. It was sort of implied that as a board, we were ignoring the desires of the community who had put this survey forth, or who had responded to the survey about what they prioritize for the park. Now, from my perspective, that's not the case, because this proposal that Farah brought to us would actually cover, you know, 5 or 6 of the items on that survey that were things people desired. So just to quickly go through it. What the B on the survey was increase awareness of Manila Park and its unique natural landscape. 11% of respondents wanted that. Well, Farah has a plan to do online marketing, as well as promotion on social media of the natural beauty of Manila. So that right there would be covered under this proposal. More community events in the park, 27% of respondents wanted that. This proposal directly has a community garden, community music and food events, community gatherings involved in the proposal. So it would provide that. F on that survey was hiring a park host or setting up a volunteer program to increase community presence. There's no way we can have a 24-hour staff person at that park, which is a highly popular proposal, in a way that's going to cost less money. Like, this is actually, we're getting paid to have that. So that's my perspective on that, at least. Increase maintenance of facilities. 26% of people wanted that. Having an on-site staff person would prevent vandalism. They would also be responsible to report any issues in the park in a timely manner, which would reduce the likelihood of things getting out of maintenance in a less timely manner. There was in hosting community maintenance days was another one that I thought would likely result, if there's a community garden, people will start taking more ownership of the park and potentially do some level of maintenance. So to me, this was a way for us to accomplish a lot of the desires of the community in a way that actually makes the district some revenue. That being said, based on the things that I've just listed, and the one last thing I'll go over is the rules of the park. Our users must book and pay in advance online. No drive-in or non-reservation guests will be permitted. No RVs more than 10 years old are allowed. Vehicles must be currently registered and have valid insurance presented to the host at the time of check-in. If a guest does not vacate the premises by noon on the last date of the stay, there's a 2-hour leniency. After that point, the vehicle will be towed from the premises at the cost of the owner. So with all of that information getting put out there, I, of course, want to hear from the community and want to take everyone's opinions very seriously. But I just wanted that all to be clarified. And as I said at the beginning, we haven't signed any contracts. So we're not trying to do anything behind anyone's back. And I would love to hear from the people who are here to speak on this. So thank you all for bearing with me through all of that.
Thank you, Sequoia. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other board members who have any questions for Chris regarding the proposal at this time?
Can I ask?
Let's go. Yeah, Danielle and then Dave. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I am wondering, it looks like we're valuing the rent currently at $300 per month. And I'm wondering if that's what we valued the rent at for the previous caretaker.
No, it was, I think, closer to 600. I don't have it right off the top of my head. I think that we bounced around valuing this one at 900. That kind of comes down to how we're gonna, if we did this frame an agreement that makes it at least a 2-hour per day or a minimum wage thing. I included some attorney language that he provided back in August, that if we went in this direction, some of that is very poignant to consider about making somebody an employee or just a contractor and getting out of the way of the contract and not directing them enough. But the value there, Farah had provided a $300 value. We're looking at more than about $900 or so.
I guess if we had valued it at that, maybe I don't have this right, but in the last check transaction summary that you provided me this week, there was about a $300 cleaning bill for the bathrooms. And I've also, it sounds like we're having to pay overtime at the moment for a worker to take care of the trash on site. And I'm just wondering if that, why that is not worked into this volunteer contract and what that would look like in order to offset some of those expenses. And some of the cost estimates that come up, it's when I take 6 months out of the year at 100% capacity, I came up with a figure more like $13,500, but we're anticipating it will make something like $9,000. And I was just wondering what that discrepancy is, if we're repaying the $15,000 that we're saying we're gonna provide as an upfront boost to get this up and running, if that's going to be repaid. And if some of those projects that are listed in the January 15th phase 1 completion have any kind of tie-in to some of the park grants that we could be doing anyways, whether or not we go with this volunteer contract.
I can jump in part of that. I think I found around $9,700 or $9,800 a year when I did my math with the 75% capacity, but there was a month off in some of the documents. None of it included amortization of any of the investment. I believe we were just going to basically get direct deposit 100% of all of the income from the endeavor. I think that all that. The overtime and the contract, and we just started with Restiff doing the bathrooms. That we were in a waiting line to get get them to start doing that. So we wanted to do that no matter what. And we've actually got in line before any of this came to the board. That's something we wanted to definitely get in line for. And the overtime is going away, but to, I think, answer your question, the value was not provided by staff, that was provided by FARA. If we were to value the spot, again, we're back up to, we would say around $900. I don't want to speak for FARA. I think she's basing it on her current rate that she has to pay elsewhere. But ours, to get rid of the overtime and pay our contractor, we would be close to $900.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any additional questions for Chris at this time? By any board members? If not, I would like to, yes, Dave, go ahead. I'm sorry, yeah, I think I had actually said Danielle, then Dave, and then we'll go to you. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, just really quick. I mean, actually, Sequoia, thank you. You basically hit most of the points that I wanted to make, and also want to thank the community members for being here as well. It's great to see everybody, and you know, for the people that got the mailer and called me, thank you as well. It's always great to talk to people, and you know, Dendra spoke on this earlier. You know, there are a lot of inaccuracies in the mailer, and I wish whoever made it would have just called me first or called somebody first to maybe talk through some of this stuff. I love conversations, and I love people being here, and I want the best things for this community, even though I am a newcomer. And, you know, I just think there's no place for personal attacks. And, you know, I think we can keep it civil and make the park amazing. And if this goes through, great. And I think Sequoia will, Farrah will do a great job. And I think there are a lot of ways to, you know, build, you know, potentially benchmarks or milestones into a contract, right? I mean, it can be dependent on revenue, all those things. I just want to keep the debate, you know, open and civil, and you know, outside of attacking people personally, especially when you don't know them. But thank you for being here. Look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Dave. Sequoia, did you have additional comment?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that part we were talking with the value of the site, monthly value of the site. I was just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So basically we're saying this, for you to stay in your own camper on this property, you need to do $300 to $900 worth of work for us every month, if I understand that correctly. Is that right, Chris? Okay, Chris is nodding. So in other words, what we're saying is at zero cost to the district, essentially, we're getting $300 to $900 worth of labor per month provided, in addition to, now some of the things that Farrah would be doing would be paid, actually paid on top of that, but there would be that much labor provided. So I just wanted to make sure I had that right. So to me, that's why I was saying earlier that, like, to have an on-site staff person and to have all these things happening and to be getting essentially $300 to $900 of that done for free, or close to that, based on this trade for her putting her camper there. That's why I thought it was very valuable. And I just wanted to make sure I had that right. And thanks once again.
Let me throw out that it's pretty much an arbitrary notion. We could assign any value we wanted to it, depending on what we were trying to accomplish.
And the value, I think, is being able to live at the RV park in exchange for the duties, as opposed to being free to us. If there are no additional comments, or I'm sorry, questions for Chris at this time, I think what I'd like to do is open public comment. If there are members of the public who are here to speak on this item, I'd encourage you to raise your hand by pushing *6, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes, but everybody will get their 3 minutes to speak on this item. So are there members of the public here that would like to speak on this item?
I can't, my phone's not letting me raise my hand. So,
Sure, no problem. Well, we will start with you, Dendra.
Okay, if this contract is approved, the district should insert wording about the park ordinance in there. And then I agree that the value should be $900 because the individual who's cost as what a caretaker, a RV rental should be. And I'm questioning whether the $65 electricity is too low. And, there's $100 a month water and sewer at least. And then on item 2B, it says open main entrance gates in the morning before 8 and close them in the evening before dark. So is that the Manila Park gates, or is that just the entrance to the RV park? So that needs to be defined there. And let's see. And if you skip on to page, let's see, it's item 3, conditions of agreement between caretaker and district include the following, and then flips over to the next page. And item G is a distinct error, which I've brought up several times because I have copies of the permits. It is 3 RV sites and a special spot for the caretaker. So it equals actually 4 sites, but 3 are rentable sites. And I have copies of the permits for that. And that was one of the things that the general manager was supposed to bring back was permit information. So the caretaker, the former caretaker was not in a caretaker site. They were taking up a space that they should not have been taking up. And then further down on number 4, I would like to know who is supposed to be the event coordinator. Is this supposed to be a separate person from FARA? And if so, is this person going to be getting paid by the district or what? And that's my last question, my last comment. So 3 RV sites plus a caretaker site, and who is the event coordinator?
Thank you, Dendra. Appreciate your comments. Are there other?
I also wanted to thank the other board members for their comments and their information. They did some due diligence, I will say.
Thank you. Does that conclude your comments? I'm guessing so. Thank you very much. Are there other members of the public here that are wanting to speak on the RV park item? Please raise your hand. And we'll go to Carol Vandermeer.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. And I confess this, I have not been as connected to the district activities as I had been in the past as a board member, but have been trying to catch up on what's been going on with the park. My first reaction is I feel like this is too soon to jump into an agreement with a caretaker prior to having more of a master plan put together. So I was involved in a proponent of doing that. I admire, I'm not exactly sure how this all came to be, but it seems like FARA took the initiative to make a proposal. And, I don't know if the district did any interviews. I guess I would like to see maybe the district make more of a decision in line with the master plan and then set about posting, a job opportunity for a future caretaker should they decide to go in that direction and do interviews. So I have to admit, it feels like maybe some of the ideas here feel a little overly ambitious. I mean, admirable, but maybe overly ambitious, and that maybe just taking more time to get a master plan first before moving ahead with a caretaker. I also feel like, you know, having a caretaker on site, as we know, you know, from the past can get kind of sticky, you know, depending on how that evolves and what the guidelines are. So I guess as a community member, I'm not too eager to see that happen without taking a lot of careful time and thought around it. So anyway, I apologize for not being involved and reading up sooner, but thank you for letting me speak. And I hope we don't rush into this too soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak on, or public members who would like to speak on the RV park proposal? Please raise your hand now. All right, and we'll go to Scott Osborne, I believe.
Actually, Carla Osborne would like to speak.
Okay, great. Go ahead. Hi, thank you.
It's really nice to see you all. I haven't been sitting in on any meetings, and so I just really, you guys are doing a great job. And it's really nice to hear everybody speaking so carefully about this topic. I kind of am interested in hearing from Farah a little bit about what her expectations would be. I kind of agree with Carol. It seems very rushed, but it's maybe just for me, because I haven't been paying too close of attention. I don't know how long you guys have been talking about this, but and I can see kind of some of the communities a little bit up in arms about it. So I thought, oh, I better get on here and pay attention. And I think Meg or somebody sent me an email and I never got back to you, and I really apologize, but it kind of sparked my interest. So thank you for that. But I was thinking that it would be great to hear from Farah and kind of get a better idea of what, if you have a real idea of what the park is like. I don't know anything about your background, if you spent any time in Manila, or I just know there were a heck of a lot of challenges for Maggie in terms of dealing with people in the park. Seems like things have been very kind of mellow lately, but I'm not sure that's the case. And I just wonder if you really have a good understanding of what you'd be in for there, and if you have an idea of what your day would look like working at the park, being at the park. And are you to be tasked under this contract with garbage and cleaning of the bathrooms? I'm a little confused about that. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And Farah, before you answer, Carla, if you want to, if those are all of your comments on this item, we'll take all your comments and have Farah respond at one time. All right, thank you. If you have no additional comments, are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on the Manila RV Park item that are in attendance? The meeting, now would be a good time to raise your hand. Seeing none, I'm going to close. Well, I guess before I close the public comment, I would like to give Farah an opportunity to respond to comments or questions she's heard so far in the meeting.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for showing such interest in this item. So I'll just start with kind of the most recent comments and kind of work my way back. So this has been ongoing negotiations and kind of some back and forth for about 4.5 to 5 months. I approached the district with a proposal. I lived in Manila in the past for about a year, and I'm currently near the Gentoli area, and I've been working with the community as well, documenting there's like a lot of homeless and encampments here, and I've been documenting that and cleaning this area up as well. I do understand the challenges that would go into there, and it was also explained when meeting with Alicia and Chris at the district that there had been like a lot of violence against the previous host, and was recommended to have a gun there, and like all of these other aspects of moving into that district, that doesn't make me hesitant at all. I think it's something that I could actually improve, which is why I even came forward in the first place. I have a passion to want to be a part of a community, and Manila always spoke to me. Feeling the resistance from some of the district members in the community makes me, I don't know, I want to try to work things out so that everyone feels comfortable with it. To answer Deidre's comments as well, I will go ahead and correct that about the 4 sites. I wasn't clear about that, or I wasn't understanding that correctly. I did think it was 3, including the host. So my apologies for that. The gates would be the RV park gates. The trash and bathrooms would not be included, as I have gone way out of scope of whatever was included within the previous contract. I would actually thought the district would be writing this contract and sending it over for a little bit of collaboration, and then I got the contract, and so I just kind of proposed what I thought would be fair. As far as pricing, I pay like less than half of the 900 with like facilities that have showers and bathrooms and laundries and all of that stuff. So I was just kind of going in the middle of that for like a monthly cost in addition to also working. So I think that answers most of those. Yeah, if there's something that I left out, please let me know. I'm happy to answer that or clarify anything. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, Farah. Chris, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to make a point of, excuse me. To be clear, the permit was in the last packet, and we can have another look at that if you want. There's no other spot for a caretaker. So the numbers that we have been looking at are accurate.
Thank you. I see we have at least one other person who's joined our meeting, so I'll ask again if there are people here that would like the opportunity to speak on the our Manila RV park proposal. Please raise your hand as we are in the public comment time. Seeing no additional hands raised, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the board for deliberation.
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute my,
okay.
my phone. Is there still time for me to speak?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll open it up for you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
I just want to thank the board for all their hard work, and Farah as well. My name is Jeffrey Bernard. I'm a newer resident to Manila, but lifelong Humboldt resident. A little disappointed to only find out about this process like, I think a couple weeks ago. So this all feels like really rushed and kind of a shock for me. I live really close to where the park is, where the RV campground would go again. And, you know, personally, I'm kind of not in favor, but I guess the main comment I wanted to make is just I feel like, as others have stated, I'd really like to see this process kind of slow down and create more opportunities for public input. It just still, like I said, feels kind of rushed. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any more public comments on the Manila RV proposal? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment at this time and bring it back to the board for deliberation.
I just wanted to say that, yeah, I definitely can see how from a public perspective, it would seem like this was kind of coming out of nowhere. I think, at least from my perspective, it was more thinking along the lines of the RV park has been in operation for over 10 years, and it would currently be operating if it weren't for the pandemic and the and Maggie having a accident and having to retire. So this would basically, under normal circumstances, have just been a change in management with an investment of district funds, about $10,000 or $15,000 of funds. So that is obviously something that people should be informed of, but it also, I guess when I think of it in that context, it doesn't seem that dramatic. It's like, okay, and this wouldn't open until March, as I understand it, at the earliest, because it would be planned to close for winter. But I also do fully agree. I think before we sign any contracts or get too far ahead in that regard, we should do much more outreach and give people opportunities to express themselves, and absolutely not move forward with anything that's going to be seen as a detriment to people's quality of life in that part of Manila. And I personally think it could be a great asset to Manila, but yeah, we should do more of that. So I appreciate everyone's comments on that.
To clarify, a change in the caretaker position would be the former caretaker of the RV park was an employee of the district, and this would be a contractor of the district. So there are different processes, is my understanding, for interviewing perhaps and selecting those candidates. So if I'm incorrect there, please do correct me. And another question I had was regarding, Farrah indicated that ongoing discussions of 4 or 5 months. And to you, Chris, my question is, how many times has this item been agendized in front of this board?
This item, the proposal's probably seen the board 3 times, but this RV, to circle back a little bit, to what Sequoia had said, the RV park has been open for about 20 years. Our contractual obligations ended in 2018, and we were considering either investing in it or shutting it down in 2019. And then COVID happened and we closed it, and we took a breath to go, what's it going to be like without having this at all? And we were actually enjoying the fact that it was quiet over there and we weren't having all this activity. And then Maggie did have that unfortunate accident. And there's a big complication there because she was also a full-time employee that was also the caretaker living in the park. So it was very complicated for us and a very sensitive issue for us to manage. So I know it was a terrible thing that happened when she got in a wreck, but we took that as somewhat of all the problems got solved now. And we, the board even eliminated the utility worker position after that. We started contracting these services out. And then the survey reflected that people weren't too interested in investing in it. I'm not trying to put a new foothold here or plant any new flags. I just want to make sure that, it has been open for 20 years and it's been a problem for 20 years.
It has not.
Sorry about that. So, and that's one thing that and the permit is pretty strong. You can see that it's in the former packet, but the board has looked at this probably, I think it's on 3 occasions. Staff has met with Farrah on about 5 occasions. And also briefly on that, I did not, normally the district would draft a contract in advance for these things, but this whole process, as I've told Sequoia, has been running backwards because we didn't go out for an RFP to see what contractors can fulfill our criteria of what we need. We got a proposal in advance that had its own criteria that we are to accept. So that's where staff kind of has a problem with this. It's nothing with the optimism of the proposal. It's the fact that we're running it backwards and we're not going to get the delivery of the services that we were actually hoping to get. So I'll rest with that.
Thank you. Do other board members have any comments they'd like to share on this item? John, go ahead. And then Dave, I think I saw you too, right, Dave? Okay, great. We'll go John and then we'll go to Dave.
I'm wondering if there is value in maybe starting the process from the other way and getting an RFP together, of which Farrah can obviously apply towards, and that way we're meeting the goals of the district and the community. It would also allow more time for the community input. Just a thought.
If I can jump in with that, that's one of the, to rewind a little bit, staff first asked the board several months ago after the accident if we wanted to open the RV park at all. And the answer there, as I've spelled out in my report, was let's wait till there's a management plan in place. So we weren't necessarily jumping into opening it. Had the board said, we want to open this and run this, we would have started an RFP process and sent out solicitations for that. And we would have pre-filled our criteria and then selected who matched that criteria best. So that's kind of how this process has been derailed a little bit. And that's why, again, staff is asking. I provided an option last month for that exact thing that John mentioned. The board wants to go in the direction it wants to go, and we're here to support that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, quickly for the community members or that weren't here over the, for the last 5 months or so. I mean, Farah came, gave a great presentation about the hostel that she basically built and ran in, I think it was Guatemala, maybe somewhere in South America. And talked all about her experience. We still have that in other board packets, I think, that we can share with you probably, and especially depending on how the process plays out, maybe you'll hear about it. Every month we've come back to ask Farah for additional details, additional financials, various things, including this contract recently. And, she's always been, she's met every demand and continued to be sort of enthusiastic and really wanting to bring an asset to the community. Again, I've only been here for a year and a half or so. Came for a position at HSU from Philly. When I entered the board, I basically ran for all intents and purposes unopposed, which is why I'm sitting here. And so I really wanted to take an interest in the community. And I'm really, I feel fortunate that I was able to do so. But as an outsider, I mean, I don't come with the baggage of the past 20 years, and I come, I guess, more with the optimism of what Farah has presented. And maybe we should have started, initially with an RFP instead of, kind of coming as far down this road as we have. And again, maybe doing some more outreach to the community if we knew that this was going to be such a hot button issue. And so, I guess, I'm learning because I've never been on the board of a community services district. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, I want to go back to one of Sequoia's comments, from last month about, really just kind of, believing in a vision and believing in somebody and really seizing an opportunity that I think that we do have, as Manila to make it a real asset and in a number of ways. And, but again, with Sequoia, that if that's not what people want, I mean, I'm not here to, I'm here to learn and listen and not impose what I want. But just want to thank Farah for all the hard work and that she's put in. And, I'm not opposed to stretching it out, but I also kind of potentially see Farah getting a little frustrated and maybe rightfully so. But hopefully if we do stretch it out, she'll stick with us.
Thank you, Dave. Danielle.
Chris, the management plan you referred to, is that the master plan that Carol Vandermeer had reminded us of as far as plans for the park go? And is that something we could look at prior to advancing this contract?
I don't think that that's what she was referring to specifically. She was, I believe, referring to that we would have a master plan in place that included or did not include the RV park. And I think that the board, when they had said, let's leave it closed until there's a plan in place, was more specifically to just the RV, and perhaps that this proposal complied with that.
And then are any of the $15,000 expenses things that we could make happen or that should happen irregardless of this contract, in order that it either expedites the process when we do go to RFP, because these things are done and they just, like, I'm looking at the security lighting. Is that something that would be beneficial, regardless of this contract to install, or the gravel, or any of the other things that have that phase one completion?
I think it all harkens back to asking the board, the first question is, do we want to run an RV park generally? And if the answer is yes, then I think $15,000 is really a nothingness to invest into it and move forward however we're going to move forward, process or not. my understanding of it from, say, a year ago or so was that we were planning for these 2 grant opportunities. And as the RV park was kind of in a hiatus because of COVID, that we didn't plan on investing in it. And also to keep in mind that any investment in this from grant funds would constrain us to continue operating it as we just got out of. So that is something to keep in mind. So to answer your question specifically, I think that if we are going to run it, sounds like we're going to have an RV park. I think that we absolutely should pour some money into it because it needs it. If this helps us take a more defined process of going out to RFP and doing it that way, then I think that we would hold off on spending the money in that sense to find out what kind of, to regroup and find out what kind of RV park we would like to have. If it's the RV park that Farah is spelling out, then she's already provided a budget for it and we don't really need to circle back with that, if that makes sense.
Well, as I did miss the last meeting, I didn't, consider the option of this RFP, and if the other board members would consider that and allow more time, I think Sequoia and Dave have both put together a wonderful kind of overview of what we've been seeing for the last few months and the opportunities that are there for, the potential to have a caretaker. But maybe giving another month for community members to process and kind of provide feedback in any other way that they choose. And then we could take a look at what an RFP would look like from our end, which I think as this board, we've never done before. I know we're all pretty new members, so it might be beneficial for us to create an RFP and see what that would look like.
Yeah, I'd be curious to look into that option. In addition, like, I guess this would be a question for Chris, but whether it was basically more logical to go in the route of an official RFP, or if it would be more logical to go in the route of taking a break to give us time to conduct community outreach in a much more in-depth way than I have, and collect that data and then continue on the path we're currently on. And I also just wanted to clarify to Chris, because you said it sounds like we're gonna have an RFP park. I absolutely don't feel like this needs to be a set in stone thing. I do agree with what Dave said, that Farah has been very diligent in really putting forth a strong, very professional case for why this would work in Manila. But with the pushback, we do need to take that into consideration one way or another. It's just what's the best way to go about that. And if the community is not in support of it, then that's the decision, as far as I'm concerned. And I get the impression that that's how the board feels. So yeah, I guess the question for you, Chris, is whether you think it would be better to try to go with the RFP direction and do it in that regard, or to take a break and do some really in-depth community outreach of our own and then continue on the path we're currently on.
Had our attorney sent us a letter that said, yeah, there's a statute, you have to go out to RFP for this, it would have been a lot easier. We would have just stopped everything and said, thank you, Farah, we'll put yours in the pile with the rest of them. And then we would have been able to create a criteria and determine whether hers fit that bill, and all the others that we would have received. Maybe we would have received none and Farah's would have been perfect for us. But the attorney didn't say that. He said, we're free to hire her today. Or I don't want to use the word hire. I shouldn't say that. You're free to contract with her today without going out to RFP. Whether it's a good idea or not, I do think it's a good idea for us to circle back and ask the community, that neighborhood in particular, what do you want to do? How do you feel about this? I know that you did your work, and I know I keep throwing out that RCAA survey as relevant. We don't have to take that relevancy based on it becoming funded through the grant. So to answer your question, we don't have to legally go out to RFP. I think if we wanted to gather around and have another month to address this, I think we owe it to you owe it to staff, and I think you owe it to FARA to give us some firm direction of where we're really headed with this, because I haven't been working closely with FARA on this too much, because I'm really, we're getting a lot of pushback at the office aside from this petition and calls and unpleasantries. So I tried to get a hold of FARA today to see how she was doing with this, if she had read the packet and read this petition. I didn't, I'm still to this day, I'm not sure where this is really going, and I don't know how much time and money staff should be spending on this if we're gonna stop and regroup and things like that. So I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit frustrated with this. There's a lot of other big items of the board and the staff are dealing with, and this thing seems like it hasn't really, and it's my fault, I'm sure, really been solidified and spelled out of what to do with it. I don't know if it'll help if we regroup and ask what do we want to see at the RV park and then go out to RFP. I can't answer that. I don't know if it'd be a good idea or not.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Sequoia, for mentioning, the process and bringing up the attorney letter. So I did want to point out that on page 2 of the letter, although there's no statutory obligation to do an RFP for this work, the attorney does recommend it is good practice to publish one for transparency. And I think that, I would like to see this board being as transparent as possible. And, you can't notify everybody. It's not a perfect system, but to, have more confidence in the work that the board is doing, that we have done proper notification and outreach. And from the public comments that I hear and, tonight and the signatures, I don't think that has occurred in this case. And another comment on the attorney letter, I'm not, minor as it may be, but we want to ensure that we're compliant with the California Environmental Quality Act. And we have had no discussion about that. And so the attorney points out that we need to be in compliance with CEQA, as this is a project under CEQA. And so approving something outright, I would be uncomfortable with not knowing how we're treating this in terms of complying with CEQA. So those are my comments regarding perhaps looking to the RFP option and the attorney comments. I think, the public speaker that talked about the master plan planning for the project, I think having a master plan in place not only helps for future decisions such as the RV park, should the master plan planning process show that the RV park is one of the priorities of the members of this community. But I also think that it also then establishes priority projects that does benefit staff at the district in future grant opportunities. So in addition to kind of help moving this RV park and what we're going to do issue forward, I think there are other benefits to engaging in a master plan, park master planning project, where I think the survey that's already been done can help inform that process, but that would be a way to engage with the community and look to the feedback that we'd like to receive and perhaps land somewhere that's maybe a little more comfortable.
My inclination would be to, in some way, whether that's us as individuals, to go, I personally would go do some door knocking and whatever else is necessary, but it seems to me that the first step would be to do some community outreach. And then the second step would be, once that data is compiled and shared with everybody to be on the same page as to what the impression we're getting, would then determine if it's, okay, everyone's really into this thing, let's go for it, let's do it in the most expedited way, or, let's do an RFP, or, what, this is not going to fly and let's just get on with it. But I think that between now and our next meeting, maybe we can have an answer to that. Just like a better feel for if it seems like it's something that's going to be inspiring people when they have. My whole thing with this meeting was just to try and make sure everyone had the accurate information, because that's where it's, of course, there's going to be certain opinions of things when the information isn't accurate, and it's important to me that people have accurate information. And at that point, I think that we should do our best to have people's voices heard regarding this.
Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, just quickly, I guess, Chris keeps referring to, the outreach and the survey that was done, and Sequoia mentions it, but I mean, I guess ultimately how reliable is the data? Like, I mean, what they did, I mean, it was great. It's a relatively low number of respondents, and I don't know about what their methodology was to collect the data. So it's like, I mean, I read through everything, and I mean, I saw they did some outreach, but ultimately you sort of get a random collection of people. I mean, it's not a Gallup poll. It's not, it's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's not like a statistically accurate representation of community members. I don't know how we get there, right? Outside of hiring a polling firm that understands the science behind it. And, but I do understand Chris's, frustration. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's the inexperience of the board in general, potentially, that has put us in the place that we are. But I feel like, oh, and the second thing I want to say about a master plan is like, I do think that sounds like a good idea, and I appreciate Carol, and I don't know what it takes to get there. I also, from my brief time on the board, I mean, it seems like, as great as your master plan is, things come up, grants come up. I mean, you just have to sometimes make decisions that like just don't fit within a master plan, because we don't, we're relatively small. We don't have a huge budget. And so an opportunity might come up that, for instance, this park grant, and how, whether there's a master plan for how this park grant's going to work out, like, I don't know, but we're going to make some decisions on that later. So I mean, a master plan is great. And, I guess if a RV park is part of it, then, I'd say, it's whatever we have to do to collect data, get an RP, or just start the process. I mean, I am also, I feel Chris's frustration, and, I don't know the best path forward, but I'm appreciating this conversation.
Thank you, Dave. I think my comments on the master planning project is a way to engage with the community. I don't think the absence of one makes it to where we can't make decisions on grant opportunities that come in the meantime. But I do think it is a good way to engage, the wants of the community for the public space. John, I saw you had your hand up.
I feel like we're missing the people out there who did sign the petition. And, when I looked through those surveys, I saw lukewarm support for the RV site. I do see the community pushback, and a decent number. I can't remember the number of people who signed the petition, but it was probably about as many as were on any of those given surveys. So, I mean, I think we're, in trying to stay positive, maybe we're discounting these people who are trying to make their voices heard. And I also do like the idea of some sort of master plan for the park, and deciding maybe what we want to do with that space, and what we need from somebody who's providing those services, whether that is an RV park or a caretaker or any of that. And I hearing from Chris that it's tying up their time, it seems like we might want to just pause this indefinitely until we get to a place where we know the direction we want to go as a community. Yeah.
Thank you, John. I agree that I have some concerns about the amount of time that it's taking up from our general manager to deal with this item, and from other district responsibilities that need to be happening. I think at our last meeting, I voted no, and still have the same concerns regarding the inadequacy of the plan, looking into the future for the plan, and other items that I won't necessarily go through one by one, but I do think it somewhat misses the mark on the needs of the district, and looking for a caretaker, in that it would really be seasonal, and the caretaker wouldn't be there all year round. And there is no maintenance of our facilities that we are, as Danielle painted pointed out of, paying overtime for. And so I'm not sure it makes the mark on what the needs of our district really are. The contract doesn't include language regarding termination or liability for the district. So there is a difference there in the hiring the employee versus the contractor that I'm not, I think that there just maybe some things lacking from the proposal. And also with the signs that we've seen all around the community and the number of signatures that we got and the concern about the rush. I do think that putting the brakes on this and until we're better able to direct staff on what we want to do, I think that that is a good idea.
I just wanted to, something you just brought up, Meg, and I guess Farah or Chris, you could answer this, but when you say the person would not be on site year round, my understanding was that the park wouldn't be open year round, but that there would be a person on site doing certain maintenance duties and whatnot year round, but with the exception of vacations that were approved and whatnot. But which one is correct in of those?
Yeah, I think we kind of adjusted the language in response to a suggestion that Alicia had sent to the board in a letter saying that it would be better if it was seasonal. I actually have a full-time career and work remote, so I mean that kind of just falls hand in hand. I do have family that that aren't from the area, so I mean it kind of worked out in combination with some of the interest that was expressed from the district's end. And it seemed to be a good compromise to work in the middle there. And with the security and everything that was going to be installed with cameras that were proposed, it was going to be able to be monitored from afar. And I'm pretty good at project management, and I think I could manage projects within the time that I'm there and prep everything for winter. When it's raining and cold, you can't really do a lot of, like, I wanted to finish the picnic tables and everything before rain started this year. Now I don't think it would be a good time to seal anything. So just projects like that.
Just while you're speaking, Farah, if you don't mind just giving us an idea of how you're feeling about this and what you think makes the most sense, because I'm sure you don't want to be the person who's kind of the enemy of the community or whatever. So I would just be curious to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the general pushback of the community, and it's a little bit, I think I'm trying not to get discouraged after working so closely with the district and stuff for 5 months. I understand the issues that I've had in the past. I've had multiple conversations about what's happened. And I don't know how I can express in more clear terms that I'm not going to be that exact same track on repeat. I feel like I've tried to show as best as I can that I bring a lot of additional benefit to the community with my experience in the hospitality industry. Again, this isn't like something that I need. And so I'm trying to do this work trade so that I can have a place to park an RV. It's not the situation. I genuinely just want to be a part of a community and make a place better, and yeah, I just don't know what else I can do to try to show that my intentions are to be part of something. And I'm a little bit, after 5 months of trying to do this and the negotiation, and then I'm just learning about the petition and a mailer on this call now. And so I'd just like to, I don't know if I can introduce myself to people so that they feel more comfortable and know that it would be kind of a different experience, and let them read my resume and, the whole proposal that I put together. I don't know if people that signed the petition have even had access to that, or if they've just heard there's going to be somebody moving in there and they know nothing about me, because I feel like if they did know me, did meet me, did see my past experience and my references, then they would probably think a little bit differently about the situation. But I understand the reservations. I'm just trying my best to wipe the slate clean and show that it can be something positive and it doesn't have to drain the community.
And there was a question that came from the public regarding the events coordinator, and that would be you. I'm assuming it's set at 20 hours a week.
So after, again, with the letter from Alicia to the board, she expressed interest in a conversation, I think on one of our meetings, that she would be interested in that position. And so that there wasn't any conflict with the board and the proposal that I put out, I actually separated that. I have proposed to do a lot of networking within the community, to do other just like events, to have package deals where if someone stays, they might be able to go to a restaurant, or they could do a volunteer with Friends of the Dunes and things like that. But I think Alicia had expressed interest in something that was more of an events coordinator position, and I didn't want to step on any toes there. So again, adjusted it to try to meet some of the feedback that I was getting from the district side.
And are those costs shown in your budget for that 20 hours that's listed in item number 4?
No, I mean, that would be just me volunteering. And again, like, so we keep going back to like the whatever, half hour or hour it is for a bathroom, which I don't think it would even be that much, but I feel like I've overcompensated to try to like win everybody over and show that I have like good interest here, that I've actually like overcompensated for like what time would be to clean a bathroom or empty the trash, and all of the other community gardening and community outreach and not events coordination, excuse me. I don't want to use that term because that would go to ideally another position that Alicia was interested in. But still just community networking, because I want to get to know the community better. And so it would be much more than the original scope of work that was within the original host position.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Farah? Because I do think we need to, as a board, move this item along and get a recommendation for staff. We have meetings over at 8:30, and we have a few more agenda items to go. So are there more questions or comments for Farah at this time?
Sorry to drag it on.
Okay.
Just curious. Like, are you on a timeline, Farah? Like, if we were to put this on the back burner to some extent, or go through additional bureaucratic processes, are you on a timeline? And are you interested in door knocking in the community and, potentially feeling that out?
Look, I don't want to come in if no one wants me there. I've canceled holidays with my family for like the first holiday within COVID, but just to kind of wait on this. I've canceled 2 surgeries as well to be here, so that if you guys give me the green light, I would be here and ready. But I'm flexible at this point, just whatever you guys want. I don't want to do anything that's going to set wrong with the community. I definitely want to be welcomed with open arms and not go in with resistance. So I would prefer that everybody feel comfortable with it.
Thank you, Danielle.
In the interest of time and the idea that some of the upcoming agenda items are, a couple big improvement grants for the park, where we have opportunities to allocate funding towards items that the public is indicating are more important to them than the RV park. So my suggestion would be table this item, get some of these, projects completed, so that if we are to bring this back as a board, we have the credibility that we've addressed some of these items in maybe other avenues. And if this is still something that we believe is beneficial to the district and financially and culturally, then we bring this back. That's my thought right now.
Are you making that into a motion? Is my question.
And I would make a motion to table this agenda item, I guess indefinitely, because I don't want to say next month.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. And with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of tabling this item indefinitely, please, we'll start. All those in favor of tabling the item indefinitely, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
Nay.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-1. And with that, we'll move along in tonight's agenda. And we are still going to be talking about the park. Business item number 3, consideration of projects for park per capita grant, application due December 2021, trails, fields, and concession. And I'll go to Chris for a staff report.
Thank you. I think I left some words on the agenda itself that said trails, fields, and concession, and then I added park entrance and a basketball tennis court resurfacing to that. What I want to be real brief with this and kind of direct. We applied for a $1.6 million grant. We hired RCAA to do that survey that we staff was kind of using to frame some of the prior agenda item. But to skip right forward with that, that $1.6 million grant has not been awarded, and it's the state's dragging their feet with these awards. And I've contacted them and asked, we're going to get another grant that's due in right after Christmas for $175,000. It's much smaller, but we want to pull some of these items that the community wanted from the outreach effort and put those in the application. And that does not mean we have to stick to those projects. As far as I know, in the past, I've worked with these per capita grants before, and you can switch your scope down the road so long as it's still an approvable project and fundable and within their parameters. So what I wanted to do is get board buy-in tonight about just some general projects that I can at least put on the application so we don't miss this opportunity. That being said, they will award this grant, and then we can spend, I think it's upwards of $44,000 for pre-construction, which would be design and planning and permitting, sequel work if needed. Mostly we're going to stay out of that realm for the most part, but that's basically what this agenda item is to get some general backup from the board, so I'm not making up projects and pulling them out of the survey myself. And that's why I included a lot of the responses from the RCAA grant. I thought it would dovetail a bit into the previous item, so people did have some of these numbers to refer back to for other issues. But the big takeaway here, and it's kind of complex, we don't want to do a, dare I say, a half-assed job on something that we could do a really nice job with the much bigger grant. So we want to be kind of careful on what we ultimately end up going to construction with. But $175,000 can be spent very quickly when you take 25% off the top for planning and construction and things like that, going out to bid and things like that. So we chose a couple of projects that would get benefit to the community and kind of comply with what the community said they would like to see. A big thing that we saw was the improvements to the trails. And that is, we don't know exactly what a lot of these would cost. We'd still need to circle back and just do some cost estimates, but getting them in the grant. So I kind of just wanted to get the board and the community's thoughts on what were important projects to them that if we don't get the larger grant, that we could actually pull off with this $175,000. So my particular thoughts are always unsexy, and that is a parking lot and an entrance, because that's something that we can really improve the way the park presents itself to the rest of the community. And then but I'll let people make their thoughts known, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris at this time? Go ahead, Dave. Thank you.
Yes, so Chris, how many, I mean, is it, if we're gonna put a few things on the list, whether, like, it seems to me that like the trails, for example, and the lookout and doing that, like, I mean, I feel like that alone between planning and getting, so like, we'd easily spend our money just with something like that. But if we put the, if we put the parking lot, the entrance, and then we did say trails after that and whatever, I mean, you're saying we can still, after we get the money, I mean, we can basically sort of budget that out and figure out what we can actually afford and sort of slot things around how we need to. Like, if say like we could do the parking lot and the entrance, and then we could also do number 3, but then we would save the trails for a larger grant or something like that.
Yeah, essentially, we'd like to get some ideas in that regard. And then I can meet with Brett if he wants to spend a little time with me on this, and we can get some estimates of what these would cost. And if some of the things are just way outside of the scope of this, we would just kick those off because they ranked lower this evening.
I think I'm the thorn in your side these days, Chris, but I personally would not prioritize the parking lot just because if we're targeting Manila residents, to me, you know, we want functional things. Like, I know people love the disc golf, perhaps, you know, improving that, making, you know, I'm a avid bicyclist, so I would love some sort of bicycle obstacle course or something like that personally. But I would advocate for things that make people want to use it in advance of improving the parking lot. But I definitely get the aesthetic. The parking lot is horrendous. I'll agree with that. So I just feel like if we end up with a really nice parking lot and no improvement in facilities, that to me would be not preferred.
It also ranked as low as the RV camping services in the survey. So I don't know that that would be, if we're trying to adhere to, you know, our reasoning, I would think that would be, that would come up. But I like the idea of something like enhancing the bay views and ADA accessibility. I don't know if that's something, maybe I missed what could be done with the $175,000, but that seems something tangible and beneficial to locals.
On the agenda item, it appears there's a number of things listed: improvement to the trails, playing fields, remodeling the concession stands and the bathrooms. And what I also hear you saying, Chris, is that the grant could be flexible, and that, you know, there'd be a benefit to identifying a number of different projects and then having the ability to solidify those once we have a better understanding of cost.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And do you think that on the agenda item, those items that you listed were of perhaps with the exception of the parking lot, were the higher ranking items from the survey?
Yeah, and a nod to Dave. It's a very unstatistical process that we took. So you can read these, some of these results can read both ways, but some of the nature, enjoying nature was very high ranking no matter how you looked at it, and getting that trail improved. There's an existing trail at the park that needs to be just improved kind of in a more of a sensitive area back by disc golf holes towards the bay side. And I think that would be a really great top priority item to put on the grant. And I did put it at the top of the list in my report. And the playing field was a secondary one right after that can kind of fold into. It's also in the same geographical location of it. And then I think the concession stand and the restrooms would really help the park generally as well. And that might be where we would have a jumping off point that it might be too expensive, and that would be something we could drop. I just wanted to make sure that I threw parking lot out there, because I always like to have a municipal sausage making idea that's kind of terrible.
Thank you. Were there any additional questions for Chris at this time?
When we're talking about separating the trail system, I know you're talking about specifically that stretch by the bay. Would that encompass any of the other existing trails that we would be trying to improve?
You're muted, Chris.
You're muted, Chris. Yeah.
I don't know, those are my best ideas. I think that having the perimeter trail and having it improved, refurbished throughout the entire park would be the scope there. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I was just looking for the general, which trails we were talking about in particular.
Yeah, it would be the trail starting basically at the end of Manila Avenue. It's completely overgrown there, but my thought there, and again, just blue sky thinking, is that end of Lupin Avenue would connect past the baseball field, go past the bay and curve around heading north, and then connect to an existing trail that goes over a bridge past hole 9 in the golf course through a little thicket, and then the bridge that we recently just did last year. And then kind of over by the RV park, and we'd probably take a map and figure out how we'd like to plot that through. But that's basically the perimeter trail around the park.
I support that idea. That sounds great. If we could do a pier out into the bay, that'd be awesome too, but
So I don't think there's probably not enough money in that grant to get you there, unfortunately, but that was just me, I guess.
To jump in that briefly, Jan Bramlett years ago did mention a kayak launch, and I looked into a Department of Boating and Waterways effort to perhaps do something like that. And I'll look to see if Brett is wincing yet when it comes to CEQA on things like that, because that was a pretty major, a big thing, but we all thought that would be neat. And it's not out of the question, but we'll look at that down the road. I concur.
Thank you. Are there any other, did you have a comment, Brett?
Oh yeah, I would just add that, and Chris has it in here, encouraging stick with projects that are categorically exempt under CEQA. So, with really limited funds, we want to do things that are, minor expansions of existing facilities, something that's not going to really increase, jump you into, a mitigated negative declaration or like high impacts. And, we just need to be sensitive to those things and, and various environmental studies and such. So that was the scope of the projects that were proposed in there.
Great, thank you. Are there any more questions for Chris? Seeing none, I'd like to move this to public comment and open the public comment. I see two members of public have their hand up. So Dendra, I'll go to you first. You have 3 minutes to talk about this item. Dendra, are you there?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Okay, I'd like to hear what the other person says first, if that's okay.
All right, sure, why not? Okay, Carol, do you want to go first? If not, we'll go back to Dendra. Typically, it's not a public conversation, but I'll see what you say.
Okay, I don't mind going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have been involved through the Peninsula Collaborative and working with Brett on looking at trail improvements. And I just want to re-emphasize that I think that could be really important. And if you have an ADA accessible trail and benches, you need to provide ADA parking as well. So that makes kind of a case to look at the parking lot as well and kind of have that continuous connection out to the edge of the bay. And then I don't know that the whole perimeter has to be ADA accessible. Brett could probably better answer that, but you really have a park that has an amazing natural features, and to do a design, and we've already sketched out some designs like Chris had mentioned. So there's been a lot of work done on this to have a design that would kind of help separate the disc golfers and the nature hikers a little more, at least put some to make it feel a little more compatible. Because I really, even though I don't do disc golf, I appreciate having activities out there at the park and would definitely want to see that remain. But there's really very few places to take a look at the bay. And I also want to put in a personal pitch for if you have that trail created, that upper parking lot area on the south side. When I first moved to Manila, 25, 30 years ago, I used to drive my car up there and just walk my kayak down. I didn't need a kayak launch, but if that trail was opened up again, you could launch without having any kind of pier. So it still was a really great place to launch my kayak. That's it.
Thank you, Carol. Dendra, go over to you for your comments.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Let's see, with the ADA trails and stuff like that, I don't believe the restrooms and the concession stand, well, at least the restrooms, I don't believe they're ADA accessible. I could be wrong. So I think remodeling the concession stands and the restrooms, so there's more, they're easier to clean and take care of and stuff. And one of the things I wanted to point out was that when the surveys and things were done and all this project plan was done and the outreach, that there was no outreach to soccer, softball, or baseball groups who had rented the field in the past. And looked like they just reached out to roller derby and disc golfers and maybe one other group that had to do with roller skating. So I want to point that out. And actually, one individual came to one of the board meetings and said that, you know, the senior softball team really, you know, are looking for places to rent. So that's one, is I don't want the fields left out. But with climate change and sea level rise, you really need to think about the east end of the park, because, you know, you don't want to spend too much money, because, you know, people have stolen all the logs that were there. That might have helped a little bit, but the water's going to rise there. And so we need to think about that with these grants. And then the same thing with doing a lot more, any more blacktop and stuff. I mean, I can't imagine doing the, you know, the parking lot and gravel, but other areas. So mine's the, you know, the playing fields and maybe the, you know, entrance sign, but I would wait on all the other blacktop stuff, just because in other areas they are, you know, going to concrete and stuff, which I don't really like. But and at the community center there was a wheelchair accessible trail put in there, and that's what they call their jogging path or something. It's like a circular thing that's been in there, and people might want to look at that. I have no memory of what that cost, but it's still there and they're still using it, and kids jog on it, and it's supposed to be handicap accessible. So let's see. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So just to take some time to look, I mean, basketball and tennis, you know, you have to resurface those, but mine would be the bathrooms. And then trails, but not going, you know, I don't know how you want to address with sea level rise, because it's definitely going to impact the park sooner or later. So
Thank you, Dendra. Appreciate your comments. Carla Osborne, I saw that you had your hand up and was wondering, it looks like you're gonna be next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you.
So I like Sequoia's idea just about not moving forward with the parking lot being the priority, because it occurs to me, just as someone in the immediate neighborhood, that getting the community's buy-in means more local community, and you know, working on things that would attract us before we consider bringing in a bunch of, you know, people who don't live in the community. And as much as I love the park being used by the disc golfers, and I think it's great to have all that activity there, because it precludes other types of nefarious activities happening there. But at the same time, I don't, you know, I've broken record. I don't ever go there because I'm always afraid I'm going to get a Frisbee in my head and they always have their dogs there off leash, and it's always a problem for my dogs. So I just don't go there anymore because of that overlap. And you know, my husband's braver than I am, but my little dogs just get attacked by other big dogs off leash. So just, it's very appealing to me. One thing, to improve the trails and enhance access to the bay is super important. Separate, and I feel like that $175,000 would be gone just like that. And part of it could maybe be to work on some just simple beautification of the front, the east side of the park. And all those things I think would not be affected by sea level rise, which I think Dendra's right. That's something that has to be included and taken into account in the master plan, which I'm not sure where we are with that at this point. But we don't want to do concrete or blacktop and permanent things that might change when we get more money down the line to implement our master plan. So.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. I appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Are there any additional members of the public? Nancy, go ahead. I see your hand is raised.
So I'm going to repeat what a lot of people have said. I think trails are really important. I don't know how to address the sea level rise, because when you look at maps, the whole east, there's, all the fill for the park will be inundated, but that is where, at least for the next 30 years, you probably do want trails. That's the way I feel, or, even 40 years, maybe we still have for that part of the park. Because people are really interested in trails, I think you are going to have to move the Frisbee golf people. And Denver and I disagree about the field. And it's one of the reasons I came to this meeting, because I did research when we were first started talking about the park and, what people wanted. And they seem to be ambivalent. Some people want the field and some people don't want the field. It seems to be pretty divided. That maintenance of a field is really expensive. If you do research and people say, you have to mow so often and you have to fertilize and it's not an inexpensive operation to have a really nice field. And one of my memories is they liked using the field because it drained well. And so when the fields were rainy, when they couldn't play on other fields, they'd come here. But I remember hearing that they also didn't care. They didn't, if they kind of tore it up a little bit, it didn't matter. So I actually, and I actually emailed Chris earlier in the day, but I would like that the money not be used for improving the field, because I think people want more landscaping. They need to move you need to move the Frisbee players somewhere. If we're going to take them away from the bayfront, we have to move them and we have to make it an interesting course. I'm like Carol, I really appreciate that they're there, that enjoying the park. And I know there's frustrations on Chris's part because they don't help maintain it, but you want your park to be loved. So what else? Yeah, I think, if we could go into making some parts of the trail accessible, that would be fantastic with that money. I guess that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any other members of the public that are here to speak on this item? Now's the time. Seeing no other hands, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to the board for deliberation. With the time pending, 8:30 is coming, so I think at least one more item we should get through. But I did want to ask Chris for, what I understand is that you're looking for staff recommendation on a general list of projects to include in the grant application. And so if the grant money is awarded, would we see this again to further discuss the specific projects?
Certainly.
Okay, and so tonight really just, having a general list that for you to move forward so I guess the question for me in the packet for agenda item 3, Chris has a number of items listed, including improvement to trails, improvements to playing fields, remodeling concession stands, restrooms, the parking lot, the improvements, basketball, tennis, resurfacing, is that a sufficient list? That we would want to recommend perhaps he put those items down? Go ahead.
Did you mention the disc golf? Because I do think that might intertwine with the trails, maybe not the planning for how to keep it separate from the trail. Did you mention that in there?
There are improvements to the playing fields, and so perhaps that could be added just a little more specifically if we wanted to clarify. We could, maybe the board would want to give Chris that direction.
I think that once we get, to answer Dave a bit, back into the Bay side, we're gonna have to coordinate with disc golf, no matter what, when we start looking at trail work back there. And I put or in my thing here, like it's these or that. I really should say just all of these could be put down. And I'm hearing what people had said earlier about an ADA space or two, at least making the parking lot somewhat ADA accessible. If we go with the other accessible amenities there, that might be a good idea to keep on the grant, just see what has to be kicked off or not.
I do agree with that. I think removing or and going with the list that you provided is a good way to go forward. One of the things that I saw popping up in the survey and the public comment was regarding the dogs, and that's a concern of mine that I have regarding people and dogs at the park and the leash and the not leash. So having the dog park in a specific off-leash area is something I would like to see added, if possible, or if we have their agreement by the board members on that.
No.
I think a dog park is off the top of my head sounds really affordable, and it's more of just a question of where we would put something like that. So that would probably, I can add it to the list. I think it'd be very doable, and then we'll just come back and have the board deliberate about a location for it that doesn't interfere with the future plan for something.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thank you. That sounds good to the rest of the board members.
Yeah, and if we could, I agree getting rid of the or, maybe just noting that these are not in the ranked order.
Yeah.
Do we need to make a motion on this, or is this, we got 1 minute?
Well, I know, yeah. I guess, if someone wants to make a motion on the, for Chris to include the recommendations listed in the packet, removing the word or, adding the dog park and specific language that it's in no particular order. I think that's kind of what I hear we're asking for.
Did you just make that motion, Meg?
I can, I'd like to make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dave. And we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. If the board is willing to do one more item, item number 4, I think it could be very quick. This would be, this item is the second reading of changing the meetings to Tuesdays. And so I think, so what we want to do here, so I think, what we want to do, if there's any comments or questions for Chris, we should ask them. We'll open it for public comment, close it, bring it back, and then can make a motion. And I think this would be our last item of the evening. If that sounds good. Are there any questions for Chris on the item regarding the second reading of ordinance 2102 to designate the meeting time for the meetings to occur on Tuesdays as opposed to Thursdays? Is there any questions for Chris? Seeing none, I'd like to open the public comment. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment.
Oh, wait a minute. Can I say something? Does this mean it's going to be the second Tuesday or the third Tuesday in this? Because Because it's the third, oh, so it's gonna be the third Tuesday. Is that gonna be more difficult? Is that going to be more difficult for the district to get financial reports done? Because that's why they moved it to the third Thursday.
Did you have any additional comments on this item, Kendra?
That's it, just
Okay.
about.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. So with that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back for the board for discussions or questions or to make a motion. How's the, what's the feeling of the board?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda item to change the meetings to Tuesday.
Thank you. Is there, do we have a motion on the floor? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say no. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, everybody. And I'm just gonna go back to my agenda quick. We will continue to the next CSD meetings as we are over time for tonight. Business items 5 and 6. The consent calendar and item number 7, and then the reports 8 and 9. So items number 5 through 9 will come before us again next month. And with that, we can adjourn, and it is 8:33 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Good night.